India is a country which was the aim of global navigation for almost the entirety of global history. So let me quickly get Jaijit into this. Jaijit, so this particular port, once it's fully completed, and it's in first phase right now, but in the next decade or so, will be able to manage 6.2 million containers per year. That's about half of the total containers that are docked in India at this point of time. So 50% of India's current capacity will just be one port. There are other ports all across the western and eastern seaboard. India as a maritime trade hub, what does that really mean and why is that important?
So, India was supposed to be naturally the maritime hub, and so it has been. In fact, the port that we are referring to was a functioning port in the 2nd century BC, if not earlier than that. And you had mentioned about other ports also. What has happened is that when the ships become bigger and bigger, Indian ports did not scale up to take care of that kind of cargo. And therefore, the ships would dock in, let's say, Colombo, and then the goods would be transferred to smaller ships, and then those ships would bring the goods into India. So the large market is only India, but it's feeding into the ports of Singapore, ports of Colombo, ports of Dubai, and so on and so forth. So it's giving business to other ports. There was absolutely no rationale as to why we should not have our own deep sea ports. All kinds of ports are important. We have set up a lot of coastal ports, which is important for coastal shipping for smaller vessels. We also have ports which handle the medium-sized vessels. But the super large vessels, which carry 100,000 terminal equivalent, the TEUs, 20-foot equivalent units, those ships could not berth in India. And therefore, they would go to the Colombo and Hambantota and so on and so forth. Hambantota, as we know, is now owned by the Chinese in Sri Lanka. With this port coming in, clearly it will impact business in other ports. It will also ensure that we have a supply chain security within India so that, we are not threatened by any other port cutting us off. And then India also starts becoming a much more competitive in terms of its own supply chain, because then we can start exporting goods from India to other countries at a much lower cost. So logistics cost comes down. The famous 17% handicap that we have in supply chain, that starts getting reduced. Okay. Having said that, it also means that we need to build the back end of the port.
Dr. Jaijit Bhattacharya, we have to be aces at that because the geographical convenience is already in your favor. Now the economic efficiency has to be made in your favor as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because, as we mentioned, the port evacuation facility also needs to be there. So to begin with, it's a new port. So the assumption will be that it will be more efficient than the existing ports because it will be using new technologies. Having said that, there also needs to be an ability to operate a port of this size. And let me also bring in, a comparison with other ports. The Shanghai port has a capacity of roughly about 45 million TEUs. Singapore port is about 37 million TEUs, and this one is only 1 million TEUs. So gradually it has to grow with the ability and the tribal knowledge to be able to operate a port of this size. And so when we reach 6 million TEUs, which is what the port is designed for, we should also be able to evacuate in the back. Now, you did mention about the roads being created and so on and so forth. But, in India, what the truckers do is they come and park their trucks on these roads, thereby blocking it. So, there has to be enforcement. There has to be some disciplinary steps that needs to be taken to make sure that blockage does not happen in the arterial route from the port to the back end of the hinterland. And also, transshipment involves actually taking the, containers out and putting them into another ship. That should happen extremely efficiently.
Yeah, it happened efficiently.